Hi, my name is Eddie Santos. I'm a retired Army Sergeant with more than 23 years, and I am a disabled vet. I've been all over the place trying to get assistance for my disability. And as for right now, the only person that seemed to help me out was when I went to the congressman's office, tried to get some assistance for him to help me get my prosthetic leg fixed. So finally the congressman had me the opportunity to go to Palo Alto in San Jose, California, where they finally fixed my prosthetic. If you need help and you seem to not get it anywhere, you should go see our congressman with the people he has there to help us veterans get what we need and what we deserve for doing our time in service for the freedom of our island and for our country.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
A lot has changed overnight, but Buick and GMC's commitment to you remains the same. We understand you want to feel safe, so we're offering current owners complimentary OnStar Crisis Assist services. Should you need a vehicle, we're offering 0% financing for up to 84 months with deferred payment options for 120 days. Plus, you may have the option to shop online and take delivery at home. Visit our websites for the help you need.
Visit AutoSpot GMC today.
Funerals actually take a lot more planning than I expected. With us using island cuisine for the first time, of course we were iffy, but once they came and showed us their service, their food, tasted their food and everything, we definitely use them again because their service and food is just awesome.
The pompous
and elite wish we go away
because we are
real and direct.
No interest owns us,
and we have no interest but the truth.
Together we are exposing
corruption.
Together we will reform criminal justice.
Together
we are fighting violence
against women and children.
We here at
Kandit will shine the light
on every corner of darkness.
Together we are giving a voice
to the voiceless
and forgotten.
Stay lit.
Together.
Together we
are giving a voice to the voiceless and forgotten.
We are Kandit News Group.
Mr. God 2019. I just want all of the sailors in the USS TR to know that I'm thinking and praying for you. Thank you. Bye.
Hafidi, my name is Kai, and on behalf of the Island Cuisine family, I would like to send out a great big Undunkalu Nasi Zuwas Maasi. Thank you to all USS Theodore Roosevelt sailors for all that you do. We wish and send all prayers for a speedy recovery, and we will keep you all in our thoughts. Thank you for your service. God bless.
Hafide, my family and I extend our deepest condolences to the friends, family, shipmates of the USS Theodore Roosevelt, sailor who passed away recently. May we join the people of Guam in extending our prayers and our support, and may God continue to provide comfort and strength during this very difficult time. Sidus Masi.
Hafaday, I'm Jim Moylan, and I want to extend my condolences to the family members and the loved ones of Chief Petty Officer Charles Tracker Jr., who had passed and was amongst those who tested positive for the coronavirus on the USS Theodore Roosevelt. I understand the hardship one experiences while serving our country. I appreciate the time and effort our military members put in to protect our country and her borders and the sacrifices they made, most especially at a time like this with the extremities of COVID-19, where we all are in a fight not many have experienced before. To all those affected by this, let's keep them in our thoughts and prayers. We are in this fight together, and we will weather this storm together. Stay safe and protected, and may God bless the sailors of the USS Theodore Roosevelt, and God bless Guam.
Half a day and welcome to our studios. I'm Johnny Rosario.
And I'm Troy Torres.
And we are Kandit News Group.
It is Thursday, May 7th on, I really don't know if the day is beautiful. I haven't really been outside.
It's very beautiful.
It's very beautiful.
It's very beautiful and very hot.
It's very hot.
My lighters popped in my car yesterday.
Why did your lighters pop?
No, it popped because the sun, Troy. Because I left it in the car.
So it was a cricket lighter.
No, so when I opened it, it popped. Not this part popped, the whole thing popped.
Oh, that's dangerous.
It is. That's how hot it was.
Oh, that's happened to me.
Yes.
And this side popping.
Yeah,
also
no, not that.
Many times.
Yeah.
So we are just waiting for the Guam Legislature to begin its live stream, and we're going to bring it to you. They're live now. Dispensa.
We have the Vice Speakers, Senator Talina Nelson. I have the Legislative Secretary, Senator Amanda Shelton. We have the Committee on Rules, Senator Regina Bisco-Lee. We have also the Minority Leader, Senator Tello Taitigui. We also have listed here, we have Senator Sabina Perez. We have Senator Mary Torres. We have Senator Jim Moylan. And I think I saw earlier, we have Senator Kelly Marsh is here. We also have Senator Therese Terlai that's also present. Earlier I did see Senator Will Castro. Oh, there he is. I don't know why he's doing shopping at Home Depot, but I understand. But ladies and gentlemen, we will begin with the...
He's there. That's what matters.
Senator Therese Terlai. Is there any other senators I miss out? And we also like to recognize we do have the our speaker, BJ Cruz is also here, OPA.
Oh, nice.
Let's see. Who am I missing? Anybody? Senator Luis Muña, you're also there. I apologize, ma'am. I'm looking at this big screen. All right. I guess we're ready to begin. We'll begin first with. On the agenda, we have number 3, the FY 2020 revenue tracking to be presented by BBMR, Mr. Lester Carlson and Mr. Byrne and Daphne. So we will begin with, I would have to ask that, Lester, are you going to begin with that, or is that going to be Daphne, or is it going to be Mr. Byrne?
Okay, so hang on a second, because it appears that every time that I want to speak, the host is either muting me or unmuting me, which is fine.
Janella's there.
But now you know how it feels. If you want me to speak, it appears that there's somebody controlling.
Check Janella. Check the governor.
Okay, I'm fine. You know, if you're gonna recognize the speaker and mute everybody else, I'm good with that. Okay, thank you for the rules of engagement, sir. Appreciate it. And the reason why you see the fluorescent fixture is because I'm sitting at a table and I have staff next to me, and we're sharing the advice. So we're not being anything but cooperative, but.
Oh, so now you know they're not going to be
efficient.
cooperative. He just had
Thank you,
to
sir.
say that.
Most welcome. So the first item for discussion is item number 3, the March Consolidated Revenue and Expenditure Report, followed by the March Special Revenue Fund Tracking Report. So for the record, this report was already provided. It's a matter of public record, both of them. The Consolidated Revenue and Expenditure Report, for all intents and purposes, I always take everybody to page 3. That's the most operative page with respect to revenues. And we have a negative 1.02% deviation from our tracking. And that incorporates, I'll draw your attention to some footnotes that we provided, particularly footnotes, oh my goodness, where are we at? 5. It says FY 2020 revenue tracking incorporates estimated revenue reductions as a result of decreased economic activity due to COVID-19 to the following categories. Withholding tax, we've already netted out $18 million. And BPT, we've already netted out from the tracking $9.3 million. So you will see that the revenue tracking category incorporates already a reduction. And then you'll find that incorporating the reduction in those 2 major tax categories has us at a $8.1 million shortfall of revenues that we anticipate receiving versus the adopted. However, I will also draw your attention to column 3, which is the actual versus adopted. And we're still tracking $20.3 million above for this cumulative period, or 5.1% above if you go adopted revenues, which is column 1, versus actual for the cumulative period. So the bottom line really is we are not seeing in the general fund revenue categories a total impact, a cumulative impact, or a slap you in the face impact based upon the March numbers. We understand that this will, it's a cumulative effect that has that will affect us. But the numbers right now for the period of reporting up to March 31st are not showing a ordinarily precipitous or extraordinary precipitous drop, such that the trigger, because this period represents the end of a quarter, and by statute, if at the end of a quarter, this number, which is now negative 1.02%, is negative 3% or greater, it triggers a requirement for a fiscal realignment plan, such as the arduous exercise that we had to address in 2018. We have not reached that point in time yet. And I will draw everybody's attention to a very telling and timely interview by the Post with Roseanne Jones, Dr. Roseanne Jones from the University of Guam, who is on the front page of the Post today. We have a situation which even Dr. Jones has indicated that the information that we have is not sufficient to be able to trigger an informative action, and that we need a little bit more data to be able to provide a clear path to what is likely a recession and hopefully not a depression. So they're both the D words, but right now her quote is, at the time that we are seeing signs of an economic downturn, but a slight one. I agree 100% with what Dr. Jones has stated. We think we probably would have seen like really hard evidence throughout the revenue sectors of the government of Guam to date. We certainly see that, and I'll get into it on the special fund report, but we're not seeing it right now in the general fund. And I'll talk about this in more detail later. This is not representative of the stimulus that we understand we will be receiving, which will have a very positive impact on our economy. Right now, we have a situation where people are staying at home, have limited mobility, and there is going to be very quickly the injection of the stimulus, the $1,200 per eligible taxpayer, $500 per dependent. That money will be circulating within the economy as early as next week. There are some mitigating factors to the general fund revenue that are not captured in the March report. For me, it allows for us to have some semblance of reassurance that for the time being, we're not drowning. There certainly is a life preserver that was thrown out, and we're going to have to grab it at some time, probably within the next month or two. But to what degree that we're going to have to make any adjustments on the general fund side, the information plus the interjection and incorporation of the federal stimulus will bear that out so that we can understand with more clarity what it is that we need to do given the nationwide mitigation efforts, particularly financially, that have been availed to the states and certainly the territories. So with that, sir, if I may, I'd like to move to the special fund report.
Let's go ahead, Lester. But every now and then, put on your...
My face? Sir, can you hear me? Gribble, can you hear me? Yeah.
No, we can hear you, but every now and then, by how we had set this up is that you have to be visible. Okay, so I know that you're sharing it, but every now and then,
okay, sir.
Just show your face. There you go.
Okay.
There you go. Thank you, sir.
Okay, but I cannot hold the device up, refer to my paperwork, and talk to you. I'm talented in some degrees, but I'm not that talented. I don't have 6 arms. So if the committee and the public will bear it, I will put down my device so I can talk to you. Okay?
All right.
Don't worry. Hello. Hey, hi, Amanda. Happy belated birthday.
Okay, and I just advise all my colleagues that just understand that we will not pose any question to the panel until after the agenda has been completed. When we go to open discussion, then that's when I'll allow all the questions to be asked. All right? Thank you.
Appreciate that, sir. Okay. If it's okay to move on to the special fund report, sir? Sir?
Yes, please do. Please continue.
Okay, hey, it's like deja vu. Somebody that's controlling the mute button, is muting, and we're not having, appropriately timed dialogue. So I'm sorry if there's a delay, but somebody's got to slow down the mute button.
Hey, now you know how the media feels.
If you need me to talk about item 3, don't unmute me.
Uh-huh.
At least I'll let the chairman and me be unmuted, because this
That's
is
the pot calling the kettle black.
Difficult.
All right, go for it.
All right. Thank you, sir. The special fund report, I'll draw your attention to attachment A, as I normally do. We have the Guam Highway Fund, Solid Waste Operations Fund, the Territorial Education Facilities Fund, the Tourist Attraction Fund, the Healthy Futures Fund, and the Customs and Quarantine Inspection Services Fund. All sequentially laid out.
That's been moved,
And I'll draw your attention to the Tourist Attraction Fund first and foremost. We're showing that the tracking for the Tourist Attraction Fund is $36,425,000 versus the adopted level of $44,941,000. But I would also make sure that everybody understands that there's footnote number 2, where we already incorporated a reduction in our tracking of the Tourist Attraction Fund of $8.2 million. So the tracking incorporates our anticipation of reduced revenue. So the actual numbers for March came in at $3.4 million. And I understand that for the entirety of March, particularly for the onset of Executive Order 2020-03, the subsequent executive orders that required quarantine, and a lot of the mitigation efforts taken to address COVID-19 put a damper in our visitor industry. However, we did have the Roosevelt personnel that were occupying hotels. We did have some other factors that took what would otherwise be a dismal March for the Tourist Attraction Fund and provided a $3.4 million collection. That was one of the factors that leads me, and it'll be a continuous theme in what it is that I'd like to be able to present today, is that while we understand we're going to have revenue deficiencies and shortfalls in separate and overall categories, it's not hitting us right between the eyes fully just yet. There are thankfully some mitigating factors, like the fact that we had tourism that was still doing very well, such that we collected $3.4 million in March. Similarly, I'll draw the committee's attention to the amount that we collected in February, which was a little bit over $5 million. That was a banner month. It was certainly over what it was that we had projected. There was a surge in the last week of February. You have a continual collection efforts that is running through March, and preliminary, don't hold me to this, but we're at least around $2.1 million for the month of April. This is, just raw data that I'm presenting for people to kind of get their eyes and arms around where we are. I think people would just sitting around the barbecue and having a beer think it'd be like next to nothing, but that's fortunately not the case. We are receiving funds, taxation from occupancy, and it hasn't plummeted like off the cliff. It is certainly a number that is decreasing, which I think everybody expected, but it hasn't dropped like a rock, which is really good, which is really good. So bear that in mind as we move forward in the presentation. I would also take the committee to the far right column, which is the March collections for the Customs and Quarantine Fund. They collected about 531,000, and if you look after March and what we're tracking, projecting for the rest of the fiscal year, you see a significant decline simply because we don't have any tourists going through the airport. There are no meaningful passenger facility charges that are being collected. Therefore, the arrivals from the traditional method of embarkation, debarkation, whatever that word is. We're not. It's being evidenced because our tourism flow, in the traditional sense, is not there. However, as I mentioned earlier, it was mitigated by factors probably more related to the Roosevelt. We do have a lot of activity up in Anderson, but that's not captured with throughput at the airport. And we are going to have to address the significant shortfall in the Customs and Quarantine Fund, even though footnote number 2 also provides that we had already incorporated a reduction in revenue from the previous month of about $5.5 million, simply because we understood the ramifications of COVID, the travel restrictions, the quarantine, and that our primary visitor markets are also very, very embroiled in the COVID epidemic. So the numbers that are telling, that bear some semblance of attention to, are really on this page here, the Customs and Quarantine Services Fund. To some degree, we've already mitigated a lot of the TAF, but we're going to have to hope that at some point in time, this pandemic is somewhat under control, and that tourism does resurface to a meaningful degree in 2020. Without that paradigm shift in what it is that people would say is the new norm, we will certainly have further degradation in the TAF, and certainly we already understand what's going on with the Customs and Quarantine Fund. All the other ones, the Highway Fund, there was an actual in March for the Guam Highway Fund. You'll see that was 832,000 that was actually collected. That's primarily due to the cessation of flights and the lack of tax revenue received from aviation fuel. No planes, no money. Kind of very self-explanatory.
I'm gonna mute this for a second and explain what's going on right now.
Thank you.
Looking at this.
So what's happening right now is Lester Carlson, the budget director, is explaining projections of special funds through the end of the fiscal year based on whatever. They're not saying how they based this data, but it just sounds like a bunch of BS. The special funds include the Guam Highway Fund, the Healthy Futures Fund. That's when you buy cigarettes, tobacco, alcohol, stuff like that. That money goes into the Healthy Futures Fund. To me, that's the only category that should not be seeing too much of an adjustment, because even through this time, people are still smoking and drinking, right? But in the other categories, there are some reductions, like the tourist attraction fund and stuff. They posted some reductions in the projections through the remainder of the fiscal year, but certainly not. I mean, just based on my experience at Adelup, they are not telling a true picture. They are not giving a true picture of the degradation in special funds that would be coming in. This doesn't even include the general fund, which would be like your business privilege taxes, property taxes. I'm sorry, not property taxes. Corporate income tax, withholding, all that stuff, right? This is just the special funds, and it's mind-boggling. It's like the administration is living in some sort of warped reality. But the reason that this is just my guess, the reason that the administration is only posting a 1.02% drop in revenue for the special funds category, and we'll probably hear more about the general fund category as well, is because as soon as the administration reports a 3% decrease in revenues, it triggers a statute that says that they have to introduce what Lester called a fiscal realignment plan. And that fiscal realignment plan is basically a new budget. And that means they will have to own cuts. And that means, GovGuam jobs and stuff like that. So they are trying to stave off the submission of these cuts. And as Lester said, we're waiting to see the impact of the money that comes in from the federal government, because when you are paid your cash assistance of $1,200, or when you start getting your unemployment checks, there will be taxes that come out of that will be remitted to the government of Guam. So let's go back to the cast now.
Nice, but maybe in totality inconsequential. But when you start looking at them in totality, we're actually seeing a very robust injection of aid from the federal government. And I agree, going back again to Dr. Jones' article published in today's Post, that while we understand and we anticipate that there will be some adjustments made, it's too early to tell where those adjustments are going to be needed, absent the obvious need to address the customs and quarantine shortfall. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I think I've kind of went through A and B. The shortfalls, item C, the methodology for estimating the reduction due to COVID-19 is explained in the footnotes for the CRER and special fund reports. The methodology for the shortfall in the TAF, customs and quarantine inspection services, were also covered in the footnotes and through some of my sorry, my lengthy discussion on that. So
understood.
I would, with your permission, sir, move on to item 4.
Yes, please. Move to item 4, and if DRT, if Daphne or Mr. Byrd or Ed's going to present anything, or are you the only ones going to be able to lead that one?
No, sir. I'm certainly very, happy that I have very capable professionals that comprise the fiscal team. But consistent with my discussion on item number 3, item number 4 is FY 2020 adjusted income tax projections. We do depict those, and they're captured in the CRER, and we did have the footnotes that had the reduction in the BPT and the withholding captured in footnote number 5. So I believe that we are not in a position consistent with Dr. Jones, and I'm sure I spoke with Gary Hiles yesterday. I understand, and I will ask the other members of the fiscal team to chime in on this after I get done. But I don't believe that we're in a position right now with information sufficient to do anything to adjust the projected tax.
Understood.
For FY
Well,
2020.
we'll probably have to wait until your May 20th CRE report. Then we'll know if there's going to be any other adjustment. Am I correct?
No, you do not have to wait.
That is extremely accurate, sir.
Lies. I told you
I
they was
think
gonna
while
lie.
we're waiting for the blow, it hasn't come yet, and I don't want to be the person that sits here and say, well, we could have, should have planned for it.
We're going off March right now.
I think that when we incorporate the stimulus money, which will be disseminated, distributed as early as next week, some of the general fund expenses associated with public health and public safety that are mitigated through the coronavirus relief fund, and some other elements, therefore relieving the precious general fund resources of having to absorb those costs. I think, yes, sir, that we're more probably positioned to have a better idea after that time period has come and the reports come out. But, sir, I've talked a lot, and I will defer to my colleagues for any comments on either item number 3 or item number 4. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Turn on Daphne and Bert. Okay, stand by. Let me get, and we have Ed. Have Ed on.
Not bad for you.
Ed, better. Ed, you can't unmute. Okay, Ed and Daphne, do you have anything you want to contribute from item number 3 and number 4 before I proceed on to Daphne with number 5?
CRT doesn't have anything on items number 3 or 4.
You don't have anything for 3 or 4, Daphne?
No.
Okay, how about you, Ed? Mr. Byrne, do you have anything?
I would just like to echo what Mr. Carlson said, that these are very early days. We're the indications are that April's numbers are very similar in total. I can't give you a breakdown yet, but are very similar in total to March's numbers. But to make predictions on collections in this very uncertain economic climate is very difficult. And we can only use the numbers that we've got, and the numbers that Mr. Carlson put into the CRER, I think are the best numbers that we have at this time.
Okay, now this is where the administration is lying.
We'll proceed to item number 5.
Go ahead and let me just read this for a second. You heard what Ed Burns said. He said, these are the only numbers we've got. And these, Lester is right, these are the only numbers that we can rely on. They're lying. Number 1, from a 10,000-foot perspective, those are not the only numbers they have, because they have common sense and they have an historical perspective based on numbers that have come in over the past several months, based on the amount of economic activity that they can see that is flowing through point of sale terminals at the Department of Revenue and Taxation and at the Department of Administration. Ed Byrne is the Director of Administration. He has those numbers. Now, on a micro level, the reason they're BSing is because, or the reason I know they're BSing is because Department of Administration is the one agency that sees the cash flow of the government of Guam. Ed Byrne knows what the financial situation is. What would have been more correct for Ed Byrne to say and the budget director to say is, we have information, senators, that we have on a daily basis. As a matter of fact, we probably track on an hourly basis, but we will not be surrendering those numbers to you. You're going to have to wait for May 20 in order, I sounded like the governor, May 20 in order to get the April numbers. And though we can tell you what the financial situation is right now at this very minute on May 7, we're not going to provide that information to you because it is too detrimental to our plans to do whatever the hell we want in the administration without the legislature getting in the way. That's exactly what should have been said if Ed Byrne was being honest with the senators. Let's go back to the session or to the meeting.
Like what in terms of how much refunds we have for 2019 and prior. So as of the April 30 report, which again is going to be filed today with the legislature, for individual returns, we have for 2019 tax returns approximately $73 million that is showing as returns that are refunds, returns processed awaiting payment. And that is for 2019 individual income tax returns. With regards to 2018 and prior, that equates to approximately 6.55 million. And this is not including interest. So this is only for individual income tax returns again. And so that comes to a total of that's 73 plus 6.55. It's approximately 79 or approximately almost $80 million. That's for individual tax returns that's outstanding as of the month of April 2020. If we move to the business returns for 2019, business returns as of April 30, we have about $500,000 in outstanding or refund returns processed awaiting for payment. That's for 2019 business returns. Those are Form 1120s. And we have about $13.5 million that is for refunds for prior periods. That's years 2018 and prior. So if we add those together, we have approximately 79, about 18 plus, excuse me. So we have about about 95 million, including interest, 95 million in income tax return payments due. And that's for both, that is for both individual and for corporate returns. And of course, the lion's share of that is in individual returns, and that being, including interest, about 80 million. And that is item number 5C. Excuse me. With regards to the refund status, on the GuamTax.com website on a weekly basis as payments are made, we make sure that we update our refunds so that people know what how many checks we processed and what the dollar figure is associated with that. And so if you go to the myguamtax.com website, you can find that in this past week, I believe that we had paid out through January 10 refund, we paid out for returns that were A status that were filed through January 10. And that's what's on the GuamTax.com website. And that again is going to be for item number 5C. For item number 5D, which is status on business privilege tax deferral program, DRT did in the beginning of April release our form BPT 40DP, which was for the BPT deferral program. That was the enhanced Dave Santos that was passed in the last year. I'm not sure which public law that was, I apologize. But that was for the enhanced Dave Santos. And again, that was that's for the team plan, for the team plan, which was rolled out by the executive branch, and that was rolled out back in March. So, and it began in the month of April. So our BPT 40DP began to be used in the month of April for March 2020 tax filings. We also have made sure that the BPT 40DP or that deferral could also be done online when people file online. So again, those went into place beginning April 1, and people were able to file those beginning the month of April. We don't have the final data on that yet, sir. It's still a little bit early, so we're still working to refine some of that data. But I mean, that's the update that we have, and that's what we have for item 5. May I go to item 6A?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. With regard to item 6A is the status of the economic impact payments, and there is an attachment for this, but I just wanted to give a summary. The EIP implementation plan was approved Guam time on Tuesday morning, May 5th. We did receive, and I thank Director Byrne for advising of this yesterday and confirming that we received $107.8 million of the $134.8 million that we're expected to receive for this program, and we received that yesterday. DRT, I know, Mr. Chair, one of the questions is, okay, when are we going to be able to cut checks for this? DRT is actually targeting early next week in terms of cutting checks. And the reason, sir, is that we, there is some level of coordination that's required to be done with the IRS because, there is, of course, that it is important that we do not make duplicate payments. And so we did just receive some information from them the other day. We're now working to reconcile that again so that before we make the payments, we do not make any duplicate payments, because if there are duplicate payments, there will be a problem, and we will, those individuals who will receive those duplicate payments they may run into an issue. And so that's what's happening with that. With regards to the, the implementation plan itself, because the implementation plan is covered under IRC section 6105, what I did share, and which is an attachment, and thank you, Vanessa, and also Joe, Mr. Meskin, for putting that on the.
We're going to circle back to what she just said, but we'll continue listening.
You will see, or you'll find the FAQs, and those FAQs are basically, of course, one, everything that we do, even if we are not able to share the actual implementation plan itself because it's covered information, the FAQs themselves must follow the criteria and what's required and what is, in terms of the way that we're going to implement the program, it's required, we have to follow what was approved by the IRS and the Treasury. So, although this is not the actual implementation plan itself, sir, this is actually a good, picture of really what was agreed to and how this is going to be implemented for our people here on Guam. And that is what I have, sir. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to mute this just for a second, just to explain something that was really important that what Daphne said. Daphne's the Director of Revenue and Taxation, and she just said that the reason it's going to take some time, and she's hopeful that the checks can be cut next week, but the reason they can't cut checks now is because there's a level of coordination required with the IRS so that there is no duplication of payments. The reason there would be a scare of a duplication of payments was because Governor Lujan Guerrero decided to do that advanced local payments thing. So now everybody else is going to have to wait because Governor Lujan Guerrero didn't listen to Congressman Mike St. Nicholas and say, hey, look, this is going to be a problem. And now everyone has to wait because the administration jumped the gun on this thing and they don't want to be in danger of duplicating payments. And that's the problem. They have to coordinate with the IRS so that does not happen. It just made the job even more difficult for Rev and Tax to accomplish. Thanks again, Governor Lujan Guerrero, for not listening to the congressman. Let's go back to the session.
Directly from the U.S. Treasury and is to be used in certain ways, and there's a whole lot of information on the Treasury website that indicates for what purposes these funds are to be used. And we're now on the third edition of the frequently asked questions because many of the states, in common with us, had lots of unknown and questions regarding how these funds should be used. So U.S. Treasury has, since dispersing the money, been issuing some improved guidelines on this. The National Association of State Controllers has also been asking questions as to the administration of this fund, like it doesn't have a CFDA number yet. But we're working on the assumption that these funds can be used, and indeed, Mr. Carlson put together a budget, which I think you got yesterday, detailing how the plan is for these funds to be used.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Mr. Carlson, you're not reading anything. Put the camera on you. We need to see you. That's part of the rules of engagement here. Let's get everybody on. Lester.
Therese Terlahi's laughing.
Thank you, Lester. Now we'll proceed down to everybody stay online. If you're not speaking, there's no reason why you can't put the camera on you. All right. Lester, keep the camera on you, Primo. And now we'll proceed on to the unemployment assistance program. Where's Lester? Let's get Lester on this.
Sir, I'm not going anywhere, sir. It's just,
Okay, just stay live. You're not reading anything. Okay, thank you. We have the Department of Labor and Gita on section on the agenda number 7. Status of unemployment applicants, pandemic unemployment assistance, loan and application for small business. Dr. Ricky?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Mr. Chair and Hafa senators. Thanks for the opportunity to give you an update on these on some of these items. I'll be just kind of reporting in terms of just my coordination with Dave Delasola at Guam Department of Labor as it relates to the status on unemployment applicants as well as the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. So the first one is, you said status on unemployment applicants. So Guam Department of Labor had already issued out notices to employers, I think last week, to start registering on the hireguam.com website. And they've received about 559 registered employers. So the process is employers have to register and they have to be verified. That's obviously for fraud prevention purposes. And in terms of since the unemployment module for employers to just input their employees has opened, they have reported employee separation notices of 7,522. That's since Monday. So that's what Guam Department of Labor has reported. That's to date. Obviously, that was just since Monday when the unemployment module for the employer side went live. Obviously, the employee or the unemployed module for individuals has not gone live yet. That's the piece that is currently being worked on with Guam Department of Labor and the vendor that's providing the services for that. But there is an online vendor. There is an online application process. Also, I believe there's being worked on telephonic application process as well as in person, which I know that Dave is trying his very best not to have to do. But there, obviously that has to be offered at some point. Okay, so status on applicants and business. Okay, so item 7B, Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. I guess the updates that Dave had provided is just that the Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation, or what's considered the FPUC, the addendum to the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program agreement between the government of Guam and U.S. Department of Labor was submitted yesterday. So that was provided to Guam Department of Labor, I believe, on Monday. So that went through the channels in terms of getting AG signature on that, as well as the governor. That was submitted, I believe, yesterday. As it relates to the supplemental budget request, I know this has already been reported in media, but I'll just mention it here, that the supplemental budget request, and this is to USDOL, that's what it's called, we're calling it a SBR. It's a request as it relates to not only the estimated benefits for the entire program, but also the administrative costs associated with standing up the program. So that was submitted by Guam Department of Labor. I don't have the date on that, but the amount was $924 million. That was the estimate that was provided based on unemployed estimates. And I believe the implementation plan for the program in general, it was submitted as well, and that's also under review. So the SBR and the implementation plan is under review at the moment by U.S. Department of Labor. And I guess just as a general update, I believe Guam Department of Labor had transferred several employees from around the government to help stand up the program first, because obviously the hiring process for this would have taken a little bit too long. So there's a concurrent movement of not only standing up the online portal, as well as hiring individuals or transferring individuals initially, to be able to get trained in this. What Dave Della Sola has mentioned is an 80-year program, but the people are getting trained, and those people that are getting trained by USDOL via webinar. And USDOL actually mentioned that this training process is a months-long training, which we're trying to condense into just a week or two. And so that's what's going on right now. And once that training on just the program in general is done, I think the training on the portal also is trying to be concurrently done as well. So that's kind of an update on that. Also, there's movement to stand up a facility. So after individuals are trained, they have to also now be able to take calls on questions about an application, the application process, as well as basically standing up an entire call center for this, because the expectation is that there will be thousands, and obviously just the first few days there's been 7,500, over 7,500 that has been inputted into the system by employers. And I just want to be clear with the employer and the employees portion of this, right? So the employer portion has been stood up, and the employers are putting in information of their individuals that have been laid off, furloughed, or reduced hours. And so that assists us when we start opening up the individual application, such that when they put in their social security number, that it could be a way to certify that these individuals don't have to actually necessarily go to their prior employer, because we're, with social distancing and all that. So it's somewhat of a way to efficiently try to process, get some of these individuals processed. In addition to that, and I'm hoping I'm not rambling, but
you are.
In addition to that, the training process not only is determined in terms of just how to fill out the application, but there's also the eligibility determination that has to happen. In addition to that, once a determination is made, if a determination is not positive to an individual, there's an appeals process, and that requires a redetermination, which goes to the Director of Labor first, and then if they don't like that answer, the individual then has an appeals process that they have to go through. So standing up that back-end process, in addition to ensuring compliance so that the program has, the integrity of the program is upheld, all of these processes are being concurrently completed, achieved, and developed. And I know that David mentioned that, I don't like saying timelines, because he's the one that should be saying timelines. I can't recall what his timeline was, but it was sometime during the month in terms of when all of these items and this training and standing up of a physical facility and the portal, the online portal, and the hiring and all that is going to occur. So all of those, I hope that's a
rambling. You're rambling.
Complete enough update for you. Is that okay, Mr. Chair?
It's very boring.
Dr. Ricky, on letter C there, on number 7 there, do you have any loans and stuff from Gita? That's whatever's going on over there?
Yeah.
I think everybody would like to know what's going on out there.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so this one was a little bit tricky, because Gita has her own loan programs. So I believe we have, so I'll start with the Gita loan programs, and then I can just kind of generally discuss the Small Business Administration loans, which doesn't come through Gita, but we work closely with the Small Business Administration. So through Gita, we offer Guam Development Fund Act loans, and we also provide loan guarantees through our state small business credit initiative, which is
okay. So while he's going through that boringness, and before they get to the next person, so far what this guy is saying, and really it's supposed to be Dave Della Sola, the Director of Labor, who's supposed to be there to discuss the pandemic unemployment stuff, is that the plan was just submitted for approval today or yesterday. Did he say yesterday, I think? He said that they received it from USDOL Monday, and then they did the routing. The Attorney General had to sign, then the Governor had to sign. And really, they're talking about, oh, this is such an unprecedented emergency, crisis, blah, blah, blah. They could have gotten that signed in one day if it was such an emergency. Anyway, be that as it may, so at the end of all of that, there's no word yet when the unemployment checks are going to get here. They don't know. But at least they're moving along in the process. At least there's that. He
There
also
was word that somebody sat on it for 4 days.
Yes, correct.
Okay?
Yeah.
So just to let you know, the people that's in charge of getting these programs up and running are sitting on applications to be processed, sitting on the application to get to the federal government for them to approve it. It sat for 4 days.
Yes. And of course, they're not disclosing that. The other thing that we're not hearing in any of this discussion from the administration, we did hear about tax refunds. That was a good thing. We heard about the cash assistance program. That was a good thing. We're hearing right now from Ricky Hernandez about the economic injury development loans that haven't been remitted, or the money hasn't been given to Gov Guam yet because, and he's not going to tell this to the senators, but it's because of a screw up with getting information over to the IRS so that US SBA can process the loan and grant applications to the applicants of the small businesses. I didn't hear them talking about food, any other type of economic assistance to families. So hopefully when senators start talking, because I think we're going to get to a time now when senators are going to begin asking questions to the panel. We may hear from Gary Hiles, the chief economist, but I'm not sure or what's next with Joseph Augustine. He's the chairman of this committee meeting, and it's going to be whoever he determines is next to speak. But I've got great expectations that Senator Therese Terlahi, Jim Moylan, and Tello Taidagui will be asking some tough questions, and hopefully they do.
You think I have just a few seconds?
Yeah, of course.
There is a tax company in Harmon called Saludo Enterprises and Bookkeeping. They are charging at this time of crisis $40 to $45 to fill out the revenue and tax non-filer tax form. This
is the one with only a few things on it, right?
Yes. So I want to reach out. Kandit has a printer. It's a 1-page document. If you need it, I will print it, because our girlfriends for the vets, our girlfriends have been printing it and meeting with the vets.
Okay.
So please, this Saludo Tax and Booking Company, they are charging the most needy $40 to $45 for them to fill that form out for them.
It's a very short form. It's not like you're doing a 1040 or something.
No, you're not. So shame on you, Saludo Tax and Bookkeeping people in Harmon. Shame on you.
This is for the non-filers,
These
right?
are for the non-filers who didn't have any income, who are needing help from the stimulus. So shame on you. And the name again is Saludo Tax and Bookkeeping in Harmon.
Doreen Pangilinan saying the mayor's office also has the non-filer forms. So
great.
This company is just taking advantage of people not knowing.
Yes, they are.
That's too bad.
Shame on you. If you know anyone else that's trying to take advantage of people during this crisis, please let us know.
Yes. Let's get back. Oh, Senator St. Augustine's talking now.
Gary, you need to unmute yourself. Okay, go ahead. Can't hear you, Gary. We can't hear you, Gary. Gary, you need to speak up. Check your mic.
What do you think he's doing, Joe? His mouth is moving, Joe.
It turned off his video here.
Yeah.
He looks like the Godfather.
Yeah.
Peter looks like the Godfather.
Well, why don't we go ahead and, while we're waiting for Gary to get back on, why don't we move to GVB, and why don't we get Mr. Nico involved in here, and let's go, and we'll be on agenda number 8. And it talks about the tourism and estimated recovery, or show us some light at the end of the tunnel there, Nico.
That's a tough job right now, Senator, but thank you. I'll keep it brief, and I'll kind of just go over some top-level things, starting with arrival updates, some seat capacity issues, and then some things to consider, because I know I'm going to have a lot of questions for open discussion. So for the sake of everybody here, just a recap, right? As Lester alluded to in the beginning of this conversation, October through January, we were tracking well above all of our projections, right? Including myself with visitor arrivals. As of January, we had positive 8.3% growth over 2019. And with 2019 being a record year, welcoming 1.6 million visitors, there was a lot of optimism to have in terms of our performance. As February hit, as we all know, there was no coronavirus cases here on Guam. However, our markets were getting hit, with Korea spiking after China, and then of course Japan with the Diamond Princess. So in February, arrivals started to drop negative 15%. As of March, I only have up to March 10th, but I know that our arrivals had already dropped by negative 49% as of that date, right? So as you can see, the picture is getting pushed out in terms of the impact, and we're seeing that now with our revenues, as Lester mentioned, being collected. There's a bit of a delay to see what the true impacts are, but interestingly enough, we had the Roosevelt that kind of helped in April, in the actual month of April, where we essentially had no visitor arrivals. All the airlines kind of followed suit. Everyone is dealing with their own issues, and right now we really only have United as the only carrier flying anywhere to the island. So there's a tough situation that we have ahead in terms of recovery. So let me just move along into seat capacity, just an update real quick. We usually have about 170,000 to almost 200,000 seats per month. However, those have dropped off to almost like a negative 85% in the past 2 months, from April, May, and then June. It looks like right now the magic month for the tourism industry in terms of our markets is really May. Japan, Korea, they're all waiting to make decisions for the next quarter based on how cases and their situations are going. So everything right now, including travel agents, for example, JTB, the Japan Travel Bureau, they are pushing things out actually up until June. They're not doing any bookings until after June. So, we'll see these effects in the subsequent months after that. But yeah, with that, tourism right now is essentially non-existent globally. Nobody's mobilizing, nobody's really traveling. It's only essential travel, federal employees, FEMA, things like that. I know with the flights that are coming into Guam, it's like 1 or 2 people, and it's obviously for work. They're trying to work within the region, so something to consider. But yeah, with that, right now we really only have, I think it's 30 daily flights for United to Honolulu, about 13 to Saipan, 13 to Japan, and that's really the only carrier servicing us. Most of them are other carriers would be cargo planes, but at this point, the visitor industry is at a halt, both on Guam and, of course, globally and in country. So.
All right. Have you thought about, Nico? Maybe you need, since you're shifting from the tourism, from the different. Maybe you need to reach out to Uncle Sam and ask the Navy to bring more ships on the Guam so they can occupy some of our hotels. That's just a comment, but.
Sure.
Okay, moving along. Is Gary ready to go? Is Gary ready to come online, or he's not ready yet? So why don't we go ahead back to Lester? We're going to skip number 9 and proceed down to the adjustment of FY 2021 executive budget. Are we going to be anticipating that, Lester? Is Lester still there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I don't think you need paper. Just tell us if you're going to submit a requested adjustment to the budget. 2021.
No, sir, we're not. We would like to adhere to the traditional budget hearing schedule, revenue discussions, revenue adoption, and then go forward with the allocation of revenues that the committee feels appropriate to adopt for the appropriations committee's formulation of what ultimately ends up being voted on as far as the 2021 budget by the legislature.
All right, then thank you. Is Gary yet ready so he can give the Guam economic outlook for 2021?
I don't know if Joe Stonks can understand what Lester Carlson just told him. Joe Stonks asked, are you guys going to reintroduce a new budget for next fiscal year, considering, the obvious? And Lester said, no, we're not going to do that. No, we're going to stick to the traditional method of let's just go through budget hearings. Buddy, Joe, Lester is basically telling you he's going to leave it on your lap so that the governor doesn't get as much heat as she can escape from, and leave it all in the laps of the legislature. I don't think Joe Augustine knows what he's doing. I don't think he caught that at all. But he just let him go like that, and I hope there's some senator who's thinking, you guys need to introduce a new budget to us, you know? Let's go back and hear what Gary Hollis has to say.
You muted yourself. You got the video on, but you... Gary?
What?
We can't hear anything.
They're still on Gary.
He's talking. It's on their end.
Gary, we can't hear anything.
Because they control the mute, right?
And the unmute button is, the mute button is off, so. Oh, maybe it's his input in his computer.
Maybe.
No, Gary, you're still muted. We can't. Gary, please check your computer and turn it on.
Oh man, I think Senator Pito is sleeping. His head hasn't moved at all.
No, his arm came up to scratch his hair.
Oh, okay. So his neck is just hurting.
Yeah. Gary, please check your computer. It appears to be muted. We can't hear anything. Everybody says stop. Tell everybody says stop. I'm trying to signal him to stop, but he's...
That's not the sand signal for stop, Joe. He's probably thinking... Joseph.
Gary, we can't hear anything.
Tina Barnes is like, I'm glad this ain't my show. You know,
this Gary's giving his report, but he doesn't realize that his computer's not on. We can't hear anything.
If this were a regular session, how many shots would we be in?
We'd be 7
okay, let's see.
Edna says, who is running the meeting coordinator? They can unmute Gary and a pop-up will show telling him to unmute.
Mr. Byrne or Daphne or Lester, do you have his number, Gary, and call him at his home or wherever he's at, so he understands to turn on his computer so we can hear him?
Gary does not release his cell phone number.
Lester's calling him.
Turn on it.
Tiana Rasmussen says, why is Lester hiding? Is Carlo telling him what to say? You know, Tiana, Lester is a special kind of talented. He can lie his way out of things even better than Carlo Branch can. We are getting several news reports that the price of gas
since we
has
can't
increased.
hear Gary until we get Gary to
Gas price increase?
By
fix
15
his
cents.
computer system. Why don't we go ahead and just go ahead and move to open discussion, and once we get Gary worked out, whatever we need him to do so we can hear him, we're going to go ahead and we'll start with you need to turn on the mics for them.
Rock and Tiana
we'll
says,
begin
Lou
with
already
Madam
threw you all under
Speaker,
the
Tina
bus.
Munoz Barnes. Ma'am, do you have any? Turn it on, Joe.
The senators.
Tina, unmute. I need everybody to unmute your computer, and we'll control it on our end, and we'll turn you on. Okay, so.
We'll turn
Madam
you
Speaker,
on.
do you have any questions, ma'am?
What a choice of words.
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair, Sidus Masi, and to all the members of the administration here to help present. I would just want to say thank you. I did have about 5 questions, but a couple of those were already answered. I want to share with you that one of the first questions I have was on page 3, if you can help me follow along, of the consolidated revenue and expenditure report with, I think that was Lester, who shared that the negative 1.02% in total general revenue is the number, an estimate that covers the remaining months of 2020. Because, or is that March? Because I want to share with you that if the report was completed 16 days after the issuance of the Executive Order 2020-03, which was made, I think, on March 14. And the negative 1.02 figure suggests that government lost that much more revenue. And I'm just trying to get a. Can you hear me, Joe? Joe?
Yes. Yeah, you can hear me. Lester, are you there, Lester?
Lester.
I'm here, but the last part of the speaker's question I could not get.
Okay, Madam Speaker, if you can please repeat your question and be very specific.
As close as I possibly can. If the report of the negative 1.20% for the number of the estimate, if the report was completed 16 days after the issuance of the executive order, which was done on March 14, then does the negative 1.02% figure suggest that the government lost that much revenue within a 2-week period?
No, ma'am. No.
I didn't hear the question. What was it?
No, it doesn't.
Your video. No, and it looks like your video seems to be freezing once in a while. But as I mentioned earlier, we have several footnotes. More specifically, footnote number 5, where we already took into account reductions in withholding and BPT. So having taken into account the tracking number, we still are 1.02 below. But I draw your
He's lying to you, Speaker.
attention
Don't
again
buy
to
it.
the actual. We're still, as of March, trending above the adopted levels based upon actual revenues for the period. So, no, ma'am, we did not lose a precipitous amount of money and revenue in a 2-week period of time. As a matter of fact, when I was discussing earlier where we actually were, it was very comforting to understand that we really didn't have, and we still aren't having the full impact of the coronavirus on the island based upon the March numbers.
Okay, so that negative 1.02 is the overall, inclusive of the projections.
Yes, ma'am. And again, yes, ma'am. And for everybody's recollection, this represented the end of a quarter. So if that number had been negative 3% or greater, it would have triggered what we went through in 2018, which is a fiscal realignment plan.
Right.
Because we would have, but we're not there yet.
Right.
He's lying.
And then that means the fiscal realignment for 2020 is not needed, but for tracking for the new year for 2021, where do you think we will be then? Will we need to look?
Yeah. As I mentioned earlier in response to the chairman's question, with respect to item number 10, whatever it was on the agenda, adjustments to the 2021 executive budget request, similar to the comments made by Dr. Jones as published in today's Post. It's a little too early for us to really understand whether or not there are significant tangible adjustments made that we're going to have to make to the executive budget request. But I told the group and the chairman specifically that I would love to defer anything today to the traditional process of when the chairman calls for budget hearings. And first and foremost, what we do on a structured basis would be to discuss the revenue projections for FY 2021, and also to be able to be in a position as for the committee on appropriations to take the executive budget requests and input from all the relevant parties, and then maybe make adjustments in the May-June timeframe to revenues first and foremost, and then after that, the allocation of the revenues.
Thank you for that.
Okay, and before you go on, Madam Speaker, I think what Mr. Carlson, you keep referring to on many occasions already on category or footnote number 5. It says FY 2020 revenue tracking incorporates estimated revenue reduction as a result of decreased economic activity due to COVID-19 to the following categories. And it identifies the 18 and the 9 million. Could you tell us the methodology so we can understand how you got to the 1%? Because I think that's what we're all trying to figure out, where you're coming from.
Good job, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. We took into account in the March report the general fund tracking. We looked at the potential for the CARES Act impact on future revenues, and we were able then to come up with what we thought as a projection where we would be incorporating the total general fund impact, and sequentially and in total overlaying what it is that we believe will be the result of the pandemic unemployment assistance program, the Paycheck Protection Program, and the coronavirus relief funds, along with the economic impact payments, the stimulus payments. We believe that the general fund impact projected towards from now to the end of the fiscal year is about $27 million.
Lies.
Okay.
But Lester, I understand what you're saying, but on many of the things you have identified, as the speaker's asking question, how did you come up with the numbers? Some of those funds that you identified was not even on board yet. So you're shooting for that. We expect this. We anticipate this until the ship docks at the wharf. You can't even anticipate what's there yet. And I'm just trying to understand the methodology. But go ahead and continue, Madam Speaker. I was just that's clear.
Very good point,
Thank
Senator
you,
Augustine.
Sir, Madam Speaker, if I may.
Yes, please.
The CARES Act, the CARES Act was passed in March.
Right.
This reporting period is up to March 31st. The carve-outs for relief were identified in the passage of the CARES Act. Therefore, there was an anticipation of the funding in these different categories that I mentioned well before we transmitted this report.
Cash that at the bank of lies.
I'm going to try and better understand that, especially since the implementation and the breakdown was just provided, and the expenditures of the utilization of those funds have not even reached several $100,000. So I'm going to look into that a little bit further. I'll go ahead and further several more of my questions. With the executive order on the 2020-07, the EO7, placing a moratorium on the foreclosures and evictions. How much revenue is the government going to expect to collect after the moratorium is lifted? Or, yeah. Can anybody answer that?
Yeah. Are you talking about the moratorium on evictions, or are you talking about the deferral of payments for taxes?
The interest and everything owed to those based on the moratoriums and the foreclosures. If we had the foreclosures today and the sales off, what would be the impact of revenues that should be coming into the government that is expected? Or that can be for a later answer if you don't have that right now. I'll go ahead and
if I may, Madam Speaker, deferrals of taxes are one thing. We didn't absolve people of the obligation to pay. We just deferred it. Okay, but the evictions and the
land management is closed. All the fees and services that are supposed to be collected based on operations, whether it be from real estate and all that, if and when we go back into business, how much can we anticipate to recover or receive based on when we open again? Because you're saying it was just deferred. Because those affect the numbers.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, but ma'am, if you're making reference to deferral of evictions and foreclosures, I think that's a nominal effect. To be, if I understand your inquiry correctly, as opposed to the overall federal government pushing back the traditional April 15th deadline for the filing of income taxes, which was, unilaterally pushed back, so the revenues have not only for the government of Guam, but for the nation, and the receipt of tax revenues have been pushed back 90 days. So we don't anticipate a reduction in a major way. We anticipate that people who will file taxes by April 15th who owe have the reprieve for a few months to be able then to legally file their taxes, and so the receipt of revenues for 2020, our cash flow has to be adjusted simply because the mandated filing date and the mandated payment of taxes was passed by the IRS to be pushed back.
I understand. So Lester, based on my previous questions, it was based on services that needed to be paid to, like land management and those, especially as it relates to the real estate market, who said that they have not been able to file their applications and things like that. But I'll go ahead and in the interest of time, further delineate my question so that I can get an answer from you guys on that. Also, let me go back to the page 3 on the consolidated revenue and expenditure report, if I may. The income taxes, use of money and property, and immigration fees were some favorable sources of revenue that were projected to decrease over time. Notice on the last column, you have the favorable increase and decrease. I want to know that the adopted revenues versus the projected revenues to the year end, what are the other potential favorable sources of revenue that might be at risk of falling short in the next few months? Anybody can answer that, if anybody can answer that part for me.
Madam Speaker.
Could you repeat the question?
Okay, on page three of the consolidated revenue and expenditure reports, income tax, use of money and property, and immigration fees, favorable sources of revenue that were projected to decrease over time, right? Adopted revenue versus projected revenues per year, and what are the favorable sources of revenue that might be addressed going forward in the next 12 months? All of it?
Madam Speaker, we're getting feedback from your side. If you can turn off whatever else you got on.
I don't have anything else on. I'll turn my.
Okay, how about you, Mr. Byrne and Lester and Daphne? If you have anything on, because we got you unmuted, so if you can respond. Lester, you just, I guess that one must have been you. Okay.
Mr. Chair and Madam Speaker, no, I don't have any comments on this item.
Madam Speaker, please unmute your. Okay, there you go. Mr. Byrne?
He's muted.
Okay, there. Well, there's Ed. He's back on. Daphne, turn yours back on.
Thank you for unmuting me.
Okay, there you go.
Yes, Mr. Chair. These fees are notoriously voluble. Immigration fees, for instance, obviously depend upon the number of applicants we have applying for visas. And at this time, I guess there's very few. Likewise, the use of money and property is basically the use taxes that we collect. That probably won't change because we're still bringing things in through the port, so those collections probably won't change. I know we've had some challenges getting funds from customs collections to Treasurer of Guam, but we worked on that and we managed to correct that collection issue. But these other small categories are notoriously difficult to predict.
Okay. Thank you, Ed. Mr. Chair, I'm going to ask just one more question, if I may. And I would note it to, in your report, you note that the CRER does not conform to the generally accepted accounting principles. How confident are you that the projected decreases in revenue are directly caused by the COVID-19 health crisis? Are there any deficiencies in internal controls that you can identify that might explain some of the revenue shortages? Any of you?
You're asking me that question there, Madam Speaker?
No, I'm asking the team here because based on the provided.
Okay, let's ask Lester, BBMR, and Edward Burns. They're the two feeders to these reports. Lester, the feedback is coming from your side. Get everybody else to turn off.
Where's the feedback from?
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
He's away from the mic, but it's still hot.
On the cover page, we continually use paragraph number 2 on the cover letter to the speaker. Please note that the report has been prepared and submitted to comply with Public Law 35-36.
Lester shouldn't even be answering this. And let me tell you why. Lester is the budget director.
In compliance with generally accepted accounting.
He's not the cash director. The cash director, who is the most important person among the government's financial officers, is Ed Byrne, the Director of Administration. The speaker asked a question about generally accepted accounting principles. The accounting is a function of the Department of Administration. It's a cash thing. Why Lester is answering this question, I have no idea. but it is not within his purview. This should be Ed Byrne answering.
Because of the requirement in every budget law for the CRER and the special fund report, we caution everybody that subject to adjustment, subject to reconciliation, these are the numbers that we have, and these are the numbers that we utilize to be able to give everybody a monthly snapshot of revenue collections for the period as articulated more specifically on page 1, which really does have monthly data. And then on page 3, where we actually do the cumulative periods from the beginning of the fiscal year to that point in time, and then we take the extrapolation and tracking and come up with where we think we are on page 3 on the far right column. So the reports are always sent with caveats on it, because there are times where there will be for example, a taxpayer. He or she might make a significant payment outside of the month, but it was for a preceding month, for like a BPT payment. So there needs to be the corresponding accounting adjustment for the proper period to account for that remittance, and that may drive the subsequent reports a little, the adjustment has to be made. So therein lies what it is that we are intentioned with respect to some of the disclaimers, for lack of a better word, on the report. But we are trying our level-headed best to represent what we believe the impact specifically on withholding and BPT is for the reporting period.
Okay. Good to note. So, Mr. Chair, I just want to say thank you for the team reporting. I will resubmit the earlier question. I'd like to get an explanation. I'm hoping that with that I will get a response from them. So I just want to say thank you for holding this SES meeting.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Speaker. We also, we have Madam Vice. Let's see. Madam Vice Speaker, Senator Talina Nelson, ma'am.
Thank you. I'll be very quick. Thank you, sir. Thank you to Daphne and Mr. Byrne and Lester. Thank you. I'd like to talk about the so you briefed is this understanding that you are spearheading the program, or is it just because the Department of Labor, Dave, is not available for us?
Better repeat question?
So I'm wondering, are you the one that is implementing the PUA? Are you overseeing that now, or is it still at DOL?
Hi, Senator. I think I've been in coordination with Dave Delasola, and I know that the statutory members for the SES, I mean, it does include a DOL rep, but I think statutorily it's the chief economist of DOL. So I'm sorry, I can't hear. But I did take it upon myself just to coordinate with him to make sure I kind of reported what he would have reported if he was part of the SES.
Okay, so I want to thank you for the work that you've been doing, and then also Department of Labor, but it's still very unclear to me on when the assistants will be stood up. What is the implementation on how they will stand it up, and how will we get this money realized to the families who have lost their jobs or have experienced furloughs because of the COVID impact?
Good question, Senator.
Okay. Sorry, just working on this mute thing. Yeah, no, the timeline I leave up to Dave to kind of ensure he mentions. But what I do want to mention is I think the other day the governor had discussed the program in Salapi Adzurani Tautau program. And I know that's not necessarily an unemployment program per se, but with the increase in the eligibility of the to 165% of the federal poverty level as one eligible requirement, those that may have been experiencing unemployment, those that may not have been kept on because their business didn't get a PPP loan, or maybe their business did get one and they're using it on, they may not have picked up that employee. The program is available for the next, I guess until the end of next week. And I think in terms of if they fall within that federal poverty level, we're hoping because they lost their job or lost or reduced income, that they see if they're eligible based on some of the guidelines that was placed in that just the other day. So although it's not an unemployment program per se, if it may capture some of those individuals that we're all probably trying to target. So if those that aren't eligible, or if those that have lost reduced hours or lost their jobs that are already on a public assistance benefit such as SNAP or Medicaid or MIP, they will be getting their checks over the next few days and even probably next week, because those on public assistance programs are obviously there are those that work.
He's not answering your question
there's a lot of them.
at all.
I think about
This vice speaker is asking about where are the federal unemployment checks, and Ricky Hernandez is answering, well, the governor has this other program, this one-time payment of $300. It's just ridiculous. This administration's ridiculous.
The Division of Public Welfare at Public Health. That indicates that they lost hours, so therefore their benefit will increase on the SNAP side. So I think in looking at the data that Division of Public Welfare provided, I believe there's about 2,000 households, including all the new applicants. I think to date, I think that was a day ago or a couple days ago. So there's about 2,100 households that were included in both the change reports as it relates specifically to income reduction or income changes, to what is considered reopen, which are people that were on public assistance that fell off because maybe they made too much money and then reapplied. And then in terms of new applicants, there was about 2,100 that fall into those three categories, which represent adults and children over 6,300, I think, adults and children. So that's I guess what I'm talking about is specifically SNAP benefits, but just determining this population of people that will be receiving this cash assistance, individual $300 up to a household of $1,200 maximum. We're hoping that kind of captures the individuals that we all are trying to target in terms of unemployed, as well as I know that Daphne mentioned a timeline in terms of the recovery rebate payments. I guess those two programs in general for individual assistance, we're hoping that that could bridge us until we can stand up, responsibly stand up the pandemic unemployment assistance program, because if it's not responsibly stood up, then there's a risk of actually losing the program.
Yeah, she's asking you when. So when?
I hope I answered that question.
No, you didn't.
Right. So the reason why I'm asking is because I'm getting information from so many different people with so many different explanations on why PUA is not stood up. One of the explanations is because the Guam needs to establish an unemployment insurance program, and so I don't really know how factual that is. And so just really, I understand that the administration is also working to getting some kind of I guess economic assistance out there for the people of Guam, but just to note that many of these people started losing their jobs right before the governor declared a state of emergency, when we already started to see a decline in tourism. And so just to understand the timeline of when we anticipate things actually coming to realization to see the people being assisted with this unemployment assistance. I mean, some of them, maybe even a good handful of them, a good number of them, didn't even have to avail to public assistance. And so this is something new to them also. And it requires, it's very humbling to ask for public assistance and SNAP benefits, especially when you lose your job or get laid off because of things that are way out of your control. And so I appreciate the administration's work for that, but the question is when exactly are we going to see PUA realized in those that have lost their jobs? I mean, we're just giving them, we're giving them money to kind of appease them for now, but we don't even know the exact amounts of, if I lost my job a month and a half ago, am I going to be receiving the same paycheck, the same income that I lost, or how is that being calculated?
That's right, Senator.
Really, if you can give us a timeline, give the people a timeline of if we could see the PUA realized. I mean, we're hearing $924 million in loss, $924 million to Guam for this program, and we don't really know exactly how it's going to be distributed or if it's even going to be equitable to the wages that they lost.
I
think they're muting you, huh?
Yeah, I'm muted. Can you hear me? Okay, now you can hear me. Yeah, sorry, I've been trying to unmute myself. But yes, Senator, you began your question, I think, specific to setting up an unemployment insurance program. And I think the way I understand it, and I know Dave Delasola will probably be able to answer this a little better than me because
He's in
constant contact with USDOL and their technical assistance people. Because there are a lot of the complexity of this program, like I said, is an 80-year program, and I just take that from what he continuously says out.
So what's the holdup?
And in terms of unemployment insurance program, I think there are references in the current PUA program that requires just specific guidelines, because the PUA program that's identified in the states that they're applying for, they're implementing in the states. A lot of these states and territories that are implementing them have references to state law. And so I think even just as recently, I'm just trying to pull up some emails here regarding this, and it's saying that, and I don't know if Dave wants me to say this, but they're requiring the use of Hawaii unemployment insurance regulations to fill in those gaps that require references to an unemployment insurance statute. So, the technical assistance as it relates to how this is impacting the timing is all concurrently happening while all of the other infrastructure for this program, the hiring, the setting up of the physical infrastructure, the standing up of the online infrastructure, all of this is concurrently happening because just as Dave has mentioned to me, that USDOL is still also trying to work with Guam DOL to answer some of these very specific questions for a government that has not had an unemployment insurance program. So there is a back and forth, and that is all happening concurrent and isn't stopping. I don't think is stopping Guam Department of Labor from doing all the other things that they could do. So there's things that are occurring, and I know you asked for a timeline, and I also just want to defer to Dave Delasola on that timeline.
So where is he?
I don't know what he's mentioned, and he probably has the best handle on that, but I'm hoping I'm able to answer your question to the best of my ability.
No, you didn't.
Just in terms of my coordination with
took Carlos' class.
Thank you, Ricky. So perhaps just one more question then. The calculation, how will it be calculated if I lost my job because of the impact of COVID? How will they calculate what I would receive in this assistance program? For example, I made $1,500 every 2 weeks. Am I going to receive $1,500 net pay, or? Sorry, they muted it.
Joe, pay attention.
And I'm asking net, not gross.
No, yeah. So I think the salary levels. So there's so many situations that we can speak of, and I know that I haven't personally sat in the training for claims processing and claims eligibility and the appeals process. I have not sat in those trainings with the employees.
So the answer is I don't know.
That have been transferred over to Guam Department of Labor. But my general understanding of it is that obviously if you're laid off, then that's a very simple application. If I think what you might be asking about is a reduction in hours, and even up to today, U.S. DOL and Guam DOL are working out the parameters for that. I think there's something that other states have, which is called, I'm trying to remember the name. It's kind of like an earnings threshold that it's kind of a bare minimum amount, and I may be getting the name of this wrong, but it's basically an amount from which if someone reduced their salary or their weekly earnings by under 345 it's under $345 a week, and I think that's gross earnings, then they'll obviously be eligible for unemployment. So let's say, for example, and I hate using examples because these are so general, and I know that things are changing just in an email I'm seeing now, is that as an example, if someone was making $500 a week and they're reduced to $344 a week, then my understanding is that that person will be eligible for $1 of unemployment benefits plus the $600 of federal pandemic unemployment compensation. So those details are still being worked out because there is a minimum threshold, I believe, that U.S. DOL and Guam DOL are hammering out at the moment. And so, hopefully at another point in time when Dave has the opportunity to update everyone that, all of these questions may already be answered.
Thank you. Thank you, Ricky. And so, that's why I asked the question up front if you were moving the DOL, the PUA program, because, we would like more information on that, especially if Guam is going to be receiving hundreds of millions of dollars to give back to those that have been impacted, through their jobs, through the COVID impacts. Anyways, that was kind of wordy. I do have one more question, Mr. Chair, for Daphne. We talked about, you mentioned earlier about the tax refunds. And so it seems like the picture that was painted, at least for me, understanding through Lester, was that we're at a negative 1.25%, so the government doesn't really need to realign their budget. And so, I'm thinking, if the government is not in this kind of state where there's no realignment needed, is there a way that we can start giving out tax refunds? Like in the States, you file your taxes and within a week you get your tax refund. Mm-hmm. And so, just, is there a way that we can move these refunds quicker?
Right on, girl.
To the people of Guam?
Thank you for that question, Vice Speaker. With regards to tax refunds, DRT's charge is to process. So, we really, in terms of like what amounts get actually paid out, that's really kind of a cash flow issue. And so with regards to even when we process refunds, just so everybody understands, maybe I can backtrack a little bit. DRT, in terms of income tax refunds and income taxes in general, our role is to, of course, receive, and then process and make sure all of those are in the system. Now, we are charged with ensuring that, of course, we comply with the permanent injunction and Judge Consuelo Marshall's final judgment that was provided back in 2013 due to the class action suit brought out by the Piestes, right? And so our responsibility is to make sure that for all A status returns that we make sure that refunds are paid within 6 months of the date or the date filed, whichever is the later. And, again, as I mentioned earlier, with regards to the actual where we are in terms of refund payments, as of this week, we had released, I believe, all of those returns that were A status that were filed through January 2020. We did not begin to receive 2020 returns until I believe January 27 or 28. So of course, all of the refunds that were paid out to date are for 2018 and prior tax years.
Yeah, that's not what the governor's
But in
office
terms
said. The
of
governor's office
determining
lied about that.
how much gets paid out, of course, that's a kind of probably a full fiscal team discussion and decision. But DRT's role is primarily to, again, make sure that we have things processed. And as I mentioned earlier, and then apologies, our team will be filing the refund liability report that's required by law to be filed with the legislature. We're going to be filing that today, so you'll be able to see this information. But
Vice Speaker Nelson, you need to ask Ed Byrne, the Director of Administration, about this tax refunds thing and push him. I hope someone from the Vice Speaker staff is listening.
Tax refunds, and it's row G. It's called refund returns. Row H, refund returns processed awaiting payment. And of course, that includes accepted or A, error and suspended returns, but that's a total that's sitting there, that if everything is cleared in terms of if there's error, suspense, the amount that would be due and payable for 2019 individual income tax returns is $73 million. That's for individuals.
So you have yet to pay that.
Oh, well, and so, ma'am, what we have, right. So that's, we have not paid any 2019 returns at all, because the 2019 returns did not begin being received until January 27th or 28th. And what we've paid through, and you can tell on our website.
Are we surprised that the governor's office lied?
What we paid through is through January 10th. And so January 10, of course, would still be for 2018 and prior tax years. But
okay. I'm understanding some of our constituents have contacted me, and they are saying that some of them there were a handful that were waiting for prior 2018. So you're telling me that all tax refunds have been paid out for 2018 and prior. So nothing from 2017, 2016, or 20.
No, that's not what she said.
2015.
So how it works, ma'am, is every time that we process payments for refunds, we actually include all A status returns, no matter what tax year. So if it's for 2014, 2013, if there are still those that are outstanding, once those get cleared and they become what's called A status, they're clean returns, meaning there's no outstanding documents. There's, sometimes things there's no outstanding documents, etc. There's no issues that have to be cleared with our agency. Then they become A, and then they're payable. Now, if specific individuals are having issues, we do have a call center, Vice Speaker, and I've been trying to, recommend highly that people call our call center, and also, or email us at our contact section of our website. We do have a contact section. You can indicate there, if you have a question, and I promise you, our customer service supervisor, actually, she's really our income tax supervisor acting. She actually is even as late as 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock last night was trying to respond to our taxpayers to make sure we get back to them. So we do our best to get back to our taxpayers as soon as possible. But really, in terms of specifics, it may be best to discuss with those taxpayers individually, just so we know exactly what their tax issues, or if there are certain tax issues that have prevented their payments from being made.
Ask Ed Byrne that question.
Thank you, Daphne. Another question regarding housing. Does the CARES Act afford investments through GITA or the Guam Housing Corporations that the government can be able to renovate their existing assets to allow programs for those that are in need of homes, for families that are in need of homes, or improving GOR's inventory so that we can provide homes for those that are in need, not just for homeless, but also families who are living in one house, but there's like four different family units in living in one house. Is there any money that can be used from the CARES Act to expand the availability for housing for those that need it through either GORA or the Guam Housing Corporation inventory?
You know, I can't speak for Guam Housing Corporation or GORA, but what I understand is that GORA did receive some additional funding through their community development block grant program.
Okay, so since Ricky Hernandez is not going to truthfully answer this question, let's just go back to the really important question that Vice Speaker Nelson asked the fiscal team, and conveniently it was Daphne Shimizu who answered and provided the answer that Daphne Shimizu could give, and that is Revenue Tax isn't the one that pays out the tax refunds, but she stopped short of saying Department of Administration does that. And the Vice Speaker, I'm a little disappointed because the Vice Speaker should have kept on that line of questioning, and she should have asked Ed Byrne, what's up with the tax refunds? There should, like, almost half of this discussion that the Special Economic Service should be having should be about tax refunds. And to drill Ed Byrne, the Director of Administration, as to, what's up, buddy? Why aren't you guys paying out the tax refunds? If Daphne Shimizu's Revenue Tax processed $73 million, I have the numbers right here, $73 million in Status A 2019 tax refunds awaiting payment for individual taxpayers alone, and a remainder of $6.55 million in Status A refunds for 2018 and prior. What's up? Why aren't you guys paying it? Because Lester Carlson just painted a rosy picture of government of Guam finances. He said, oh, it's only going to be negative 1.02 that we're tracking. If that's the case, you can get the tax refunds out, because there was a provision for tax refunds from the revenues of the government of Guam for $125 million. What gives? What's the problem? Because 1%, a 1% reduction in $1 billion budget is what? $10 million? That means they have a lot of money to pay tax refunds if the fiscal team is telling the truth. And it's just amazing to me that the legislature is not keeping on this line of questioning regarding tax refunds and asking the right person, Ed Byrne, to answer. Let's go back. I don't know why it's buffering so much. Is that us or is that them? That's them?
Can I just follow up with you on the 2019 individual returns? You said that we are already at $73 million for processed returns, and they are awaiting payment. Can you give us an idea based on prior years what the total will be for 2019 when we reach the filing deadline in June?
Oh, I'm sorry, Senator, I didn't have that information. I was looking at maybe if you were going to do prior, I was looking at prior where we were in April 2019, so I could share where we were at that time.
Sure, if you could do that.
So with regard to, if we compare 2019 April and 2020 April, as of 2020, we had 29,369 returns filed. And we had, in terms of those, what is unprocessed, we had about 4,000 unprocessed. When I look back at April 20, 2019, we only had about 17,000 returns that have been filed as of April 30. So, in terms of the number of returns total, we have about 12,000 more that were filed so far as of April than in prior year. But in terms of those that were actually processed or left unprocessed, meaning that they have not been processed yet, back in April 2019, we had about 12,000 that were left as unprocessed as of that time. And as of this time, as of April 30, we only have about 4,000. So, in terms of number of returns that we have that are, there's multiple reasons why that 73 million is significantly higher than we saw last year for 2018 returns. One of them, because we have more returns, we have about 12,000 more. The other being that we have, we've been able to keep our unprocessed returns a little bit lower. So we have processed more of the returns that we've received. So that combination has caused for, of course, our refunds return process awaiting payment to go to 73 million. And just as a side note, I just to kind of give some background as to perhaps that way that might have happened. Of course, after the CARES Act was passed, it was signed by President Trump in March 27th, stateside time, which was March 28th, Saturday, Guam time. Immediately after that, the Revenue Tax team was activated to make sure that we process the returns so that we can make sure we pay EIP to our people. And so Revenue Tax since about March 30 has been activated to try to make sure that we do that. We've been also, looking at ways that we can be more efficient in terms of trying to make sure that we process as quickly as possible. Initially, we were hoping, of course, I had mentioned this before, although the CARES Act did state 2019 was the first year we looked at, we were hoping Congress would have, that the U.S. Treasury and the IRS would have allowed for us to use 2018 instead of 2019. And that's why initially you may have seen that we were able to, successfully at least discuss with them and have them adjust the language for the territories so that instead of, of course, using 2018 first, we were able to use 2019 validly filed and processed by DRT. And so if you don't have a 2019 validly filed and processed return, then we look at your 2018 validly filed processed and return. So, again, yes, ma'am, we have about 73 million in 2019 tax refunds. And this does include those things, though, that are not A status. I asked my team if we could pull that apart. It's a little bit difficult. So they had a challenge. The way our report works is it lumps it all together. So this also has those returns as well that are E or they're error or suspended for some reason. They could be missing documents. They could have an issue where, a taxpayer may have to come in and address some questions that we may have. But that's only, again, for 2019. And just, if I could give a summary, just so that way it's very clear. I know, and I apologize again for not having the the refund liability report filed with you and on file there, but I wanted to make sure whatever document we actually provided for SES purposes was the filed piece or the filed version. Our team's filing that today. If it's not already been done, it will be done before 5 o'clock. But in terms of, so in terms of 2019 individual returns, we have about 73 million in outstanding and we call it refunds, returns, processed awaiting payment. And that's for 2019. For 2018 and prior, we have about 6.5.
Okay, guys, the only reason we're hanging on to this stream is we're waiting for either Senator Therese Terlahi, Senator Jim Moylan, or Senator Tello Taitigui to ask the tough questions of the right people. So hopefully the next person to ask a question is one of those three senators, because this is getting ridiculous. The senators are asking the wrong people some of the right questions and the wrong questions of all of the people. So we'll see.
We have about 500,000. And then for 2018 and prior business returns, we have about 13.5 million. So that's a total of 14 million. If you add the 14 and the 80, it's about 94 million. So there's about 94 million total total refunds, and that's for
information available to us. Having these open hearings. I don't believe it's incumbent upon us. Jesus. My face is here, but I can't hear her.
I was on mute and I couldn't. Unmute myself.
Oh, yes. Sorry.
That's fine. I just wanted to get a clarification from you on the record, and, you know, it is what it is. The next question that I have...
Thank you, Senator, but I think I've made that clear on 3 occasions earlier today, so I thank you for asking, but...
To myself and also to the people of Guam what your stance is.
Oh, that
so
sounded
thank
like
you very
something
much.
you just missed.
Ms. Shimizu, I have a question for you. I appreciate the vice speaker's question, and also Senator Shelton's question about this, but can you just reiterate, you cited around $73 million, but that included returns with error.
Okay, we're not going to get anywhere with this legislative feed.
Status A returns are
Let's just stop this. Their feed is just too broken. Let me come off of this. So in a few minutes, we're gonna come back live. We're just gonna take a little break because we need, like, I wanna take like a 5-minute nap or something, or I get some coffee or something in my bloodstream from that, I don't know what that was. But it's taking too long to get anywhere, and hopefully they do get somewhere, but they're not gonna get somewhere on Kandit's live stream. And we'll see whatever news releases come out of the Guam Legislature. But in a few minutes, we will come back on live, and we are going to do live calls to a bunch of places and try to get some answers on a bunch of things. When we return for Kandit News, I'm Troy Torres. Our producer's desk is Eric Rosario. And outside helping with the food distribution is Johnny.